Welcome to this meeting of Epping Forest District Council, and if I can ask Mr Woodhall, I believe, to read the webcasting introduction.
Thank you, Chairman would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing or another such use by third parties. If you are seated in the lower public seating area, it is likely that the recording cameras will capture your image, and this will result in the possibility that your image will become part of the broadcast. This may infringe your human and data protection rights, and if you wish to avoid this, you should move to the upper public gallery. Could I also please remind members to switch on their microphones when they speak and to switch them off when they have finished. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Apologies for absence. Oh, yeah, microphone.
Councillor Chairman, I've had a message from Councillor Michael Owen, who's out of the country, I'm afraid, today, so he can't join the meeting.
Thank you very much. And we have other apologies, I know.
Yes, Chairman. We have apologies from... Oops. Oh, sorry. Apologies from Councillor Burrows, Councillor Heather, Councillor Bob Jennings, Councillor Judy Jennings, Councillor Joggia, Councillor Kaufman, Councillor Lee, Councillor McIver, Councillor Rackham, Councillor Stocker and Councillor Yerrell.
Thank you very much. Councillor Whitbread?
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, I think I need to add Councillor Patel to that list.
Thank you very much. Any others? No? Thank you. Any declarations of interest? No? Thank you. And then we move on to the minutes of the last meeting, which are on pages 7 to 20. Are we happy to approve those as a correct record? Thank you. And now we move on to item 5 on the agenda, which is an item in memory of Her Majesty the late Queen Elizabeth II. And we will stand for 2 minutes silence to be held in honour of her life. So if I could ask all members and officers present if you would stand for this moment. Thank you very much. And we now move on to tributes, and if I myself can lead off with a tribute to Her late Majesty. With the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, we saw the passing of a long-serving and much-loved monarch. To have reached the great age of 96 and to have been constantly in the service of our country says so much about her as a person. She lived through turbulent times, times of disaster and periods of peace. She travelled the world, representing our country in all corners of the globe. It says much about the impact that had when we heard people being interviewed in London who had travelled to Britain just to be able to pay their last respects to her. Family obviously meant everything to her, and you always felt that did not just mean her own family, but the wider family of the United Kingdom and the countries of the Commonwealth. Clips of her over the years meeting people, which have been re-shown recently, have always shown how she took a real interest in the people that she met and had something pertinent to say to each of them. I never had that privilege, but my daughter was introduced to her when Mayor of Hertford. She expected nothing more than a quick handshake, but a few words were exchanged which have stayed in her memory. The passing of Her late Majesty leaves a large hole in the life of our country, but her memory will live on in so many areas. It was a life which was well lived, and one which will always be remembered as a part of the history of our country. Thank you. If I now move on to the Leader of Council, Councillor Whitbread.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't think at these sort of times that words are often enough to actually pay tribute to somebody like the Queen, our beloved Queen, and all that she achieved for this country over a 70-year reign, starting with Winston Churchill and ending with the current Prime Minister. It seems only 5 minutes ago we were celebrating the Platinum Jubilee, and we saw how that brought the country together. I did take time out to queue for the lying in state, 13 and a half hours, but every hour really worth it. And it struck me then how many people that even in death the Queen could bring together, and how much she touched the world, not just the United Kingdom, but across the Commonwealth and beyond. And it's important, I think, to remember when the Queen first became the Queen, we were an empire, and the world has moved on, and she was a constant in an ever-changing world that saw the change in our social patterns, technologies, and she was always there, that constant, that one thing that really gelled us together. And I can remember numerous jubilees during my lifetime, and that sense of duty. You can just never underestimate how much she brought to the country, but that sense of duty from a 21-year-old through to a 96-year-old, never failing, never faltering, always putting her people first and her family first. What a wonderful person, what a great legacy that she has and will never be forgotten. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Caroline Pond.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I think they were two very good speeches. Thank you. The LRA group joined me in offering our condolences on the death of Queen Elizabeth II. I think all of us, whether keen monarchists or not, wish to give thanks for her very long life and reign, for her dedication to her role, even working into her 90s when most would have retired. Thank you. And we give our best wishes to King Charles III as he starts, I called him King Charles, in his reign. Right.
Thank you very much. Councillor John Whitehouse.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I mean, Queen Elizabeth occupied a place in national and international life that's unlike that of anyone else, and probably will be. I mean, she's got a profile and level of recognition greater than probably almost anyone else, but not a celebrity. Someone who signed active parliaments and read state papers, but not a politician. Someone apparently who appeared in dreams more often than any other person. And probably one of the first personalities we actually became aware of, outside our immediate family circle. I mean, there's even a whole subcategory of children's literature, based on meeting the Queen and often ending up with tea at the palace. I mean, the sort of series of royal occasions we've lived through are sort of like punctuation marks, aren't they? The jubilees, to a lesser extent, royal weddings, the funeral a couple of weeks ago. They're things which people will remember. They'll remember what stage of life they were when those occasions come round, and what they were doing and they were involved in at those occasions. You can't describe anything as a tragedy when someone dies, at the age of 96 peacefully after a long, full, and I hope fulfilled life. But it is, right that we pause for reflection. It's the only monarch that most of us have ever known. One or two exceptions in this chamber, but not many. And a chance to think about looking forward. The date of the coronation was announced today, and the changes that will bring. So, our sympathies particularly with the family of the Queen and those who are close to us. But it's undoubtedly also an important point that marks a point in the nation. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Heap, as leader of the Green Group, did you wish to add something?
Well, yeah, I mean, how can one sum up what Her Majesty has meant to the country for all of its reasons, culturally, politically? It's just impossible to sum her up. And you can have different views on the role of the monarchy in the future, ranging from abolitionists to staunch supporters. And I would go for the support for this, admittedly anachronistic institution. But whatever the position you adopt is, you must remember that she didn't choose the role, but she carried it out with absolute aplomb. And she's, well, as Councillor Whitehouse says, incredibly recognisable. I doubt anybody in the chamber could name the President of Germany at this moment. And she was part of a continuum, as Councillor Whitbread pointed out. And that continuum now carries on with Charles III. Who has also not chosen the role and been remarkable to stay sane in the onslaught that he's had from the press. So he deserves our support, so long live the King.
Thank you very much. And if I can now go to Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Chairman. When I first saw this on the agenda, I just knew instinctively that I did just want to share a few thoughts and a tribute to our late Majesty. And when I reflected upon it, I thought the best way for me to do it was to share parts of two of the tributes that hit me the most, reading through many of the tributes that we have all heard nationally. The first one I want to share is from someone that we will all have heard of, and it's just four of the sentences that the Archbishop of Canterbury spoke in his wonderful sermon from the Abbey on the funeral day, and they just really hit home and explain everything that I feel about our Queen. And in these 4 sentences he wrote or spoke, Her late Majesty famously declared on her 21st birthday broadcast that her whole life would be dedicated to serving the nation and Commonwealth. Rarely has such a promise been so well kept. Few leaders received the outpouring of love that we have seen. People of loving service are rare in any walk of life. Leaders of loving service are still rarer. But in all those cases, those who serve will be loved and remembered when those who cling to power and privileges are long forgotten. That's certainly the case, Madam Chairman. The grief of this day, not only felt by the late Queen's family, but all around the nation, the Commonwealth and the world, arises from her abundant life and loving service. now gone from us. And then the second partial tribute that I want to share is from someone that we won't know, but it's someone I know very well, because it's my younger brother. Some of my Loughton colleagues know him. And his last job in the RAF actually made him a member of the Royal Household for 2 years. And I just want to share something that he's written for our church magazine in Loughton, the Loughton Methodist Church magazine, because I think it's another kind of more personal tribute that really hit me. And he's written, "She wasn't just our monarch, she was our commander-in-chief, our boss, the sovereign that we had all sworn allegiance to. But as well as being a symbol for the whole nation, she was also a real person, and she was one of the kindest, most informed and genuinely interested people that I ever met. She took her responsibilities, but not herself, so very seriously, and she totally devoted herself to our country. A wonderful example to us all. She personified integrity, service and dedication to duty, and she consistently but unabusively demonstrated her deep faith in all that she did." In conclusion, Chairman, it was definitely a life lived in service. It was a death in faith, now risen in glory.
Thank you very much for that, and I think it was particularly moving to hear the comments from somebody who had served her as a member of the armed services. Thank you. Do we have anyone else who wishes to make any comments? Councillor Lyon.
Thank you, Chairman. As a personal comment, having worked at Buckingham Palace for 10 years and had contact with Her Majesty, it is of great sadness and also fondness that I remember her and meeting her on a number of occasions and working at Buckingham Palace and at Clarence House, which was the home of the Prince of Wales. She would be missed, and even now I speak to some of my colleagues that are still working there, and it is with great sadness that they've endured this very sad loss. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much for that. And I had, of course, forgotten that you had worked at the palace itself. Thank you. Do we have anyone else who wishes to add any tributes? No? Thank you very much indeed. So we move on in the agenda, and it's the announcements. Just a few things I would like to say under this heading. The first one relating to what we have just been hearing tributes regarding. It follows on from that, and I would like to express my sincere thanks to Tom Kahn and to all the comms team and others involved who worked extremely hard in the period following on from the death of Her late Majesty. I would also make particular mention of Pat Seeger, who has been involved in coordinating every aspect of what had to be put in place as set out in Operation London Bridge. Her attention to detail ensured that everything which had to be done was done in an extremely professional manner. And this included working with the Reverend Lee Batson and Epping Town Council to organise what was a very well-attended service to commemorate the life of Her late Majesty, which was held in St John's Church on the 14th of September. So thank you, Pat, thank you, Tom, and also thanks to everyone else who went that extra mile over that period. I know it was a very tough period, a lot to fit into a very short space of time, but it certainly was smooth, everything worked. Thank you very much indeed. And I'd also just like to thank all of you who attended the service, and I know there were other services around the district as well, and we're also at the civic offices for the reading of the proclamation of the accession of King Charles III. Just moving on, I just add that I did represent the district at the service of commemoration and Thanksgiving, which was held in Chelmsford Cathedral on the 18th of September. Just a couple of other bits that I'd just like to mention. in August, and this is referred to in Councillor Patel's report, there were quite a large number of children's holiday activities in the programme that was put in place by the council. I went along to a few of these activities, which were very well attended and appreciated by the parents of the children who attended as well. The reason I mention this is that in many of your wards, Play in the Park is one of the events that takes place. And it was thought that it would be a good opportunity for members, if any of you are available in the coming year, to go along to some of these activities in your own wards, just to see what is being provided for our youngsters in the district. Officers felt that it would be something that, just to drop in when you get the list of events. Play in the Park is the one that is particularly pertinent to each of the wards where it takes place. Finally, just to say how pleased I was to have been able to attend the opening of the Spinks House, a pair of semi-detached houses in Waltham Abbey, which have been named after the late Don Spinks, a past Epping Forest District Councillor, whom some of you will remember still. I only just remember him as a councillor. I think he was still here in my initial year. I cut the ribbon alongside his widow, Liz Webster, who herself, as many of you will know, is a former member of this council and also a Waltham Abbey Town councillor. And just as an afterthought, if any of you didn't sign a book of condolence and would still like to do so, there is a book still in the chairman's office if you wanted to go in there after this meeting and add your thoughts and signature to that. That is still there. So thank you very much for that. Moving on to item 7, public questions. I don't believe there are any. Oh, sorry. Sorry, I'm looking straight at Mr. Padfield. Apologies. We do have a question from Mr. Padfield, and if I can ask you to read out your question, Mr. Padfield.
Thank you, Chairman. I feel that this has come at an unfortunate time because I had the privilege of meeting the Queen once, and I was invited to a garden party, and after many years of service to the National Farmers Union, and my memory was fleeting of the Queen, but it was the Duke of Edinburgh that amused me, because there was a huge surrounding around the Queen, and you had a job to get near her. But the Duke of Edinburgh was sitting, leaning on his shooting stick at the back, and nobody was talking to him. And I think we should remember the Duke of Edinburgh this evening, because he's had a huge contribution to our public life. But can I move on to the question? The residential development of 9 acres of open field, green belt in the Lavers remains a source of concern for residents. The documentation downloaded and retained by the parish council clerk from the council's, this council's planning search website indicates that officers granted a residential permission to a newly erected stables. In fact, I think the stables were only half erected at the time. Permission included dumping of many hundreds of tons of waste material under the pretext of landscaping. In fact, many thousands of tons of material. The parish council notified the district council about the dumping and queried the residential permission. All this happened in the first 2 weeks of lockdown. The entire application documentation was internally removed from the council's records, including from the council's planning search. This literally happened while the parish council clerk was watching. The investigation undertaken by the district council's internal auditors denies the veracity of the parish clerk's documents copied from the council's website. I didn't present documents that were in any way fraudulent or any way inaccurate. I presented them correctly, and I take exception to that statement. They state without, this is your auditors, they state without proper digital forensic investigation, which will be costly to the council, the documents you submitted as evidence of their existence cannot be verified. Now, you must be joking, Chairman. This is a screenshot of your planning search. This is the application for the planning permission. Yeah, okay, all right, I'm sorry, but no consideration has been given by the auditor as to how or why a parish council clerk would fraudulently construct these documents and also fabricate the associated contemporaneous email trail between parish council, the district council, Essex County Council, EALC, NALC. A huge amount of correspondence occurred in the following 10 days after this documentation was sent down, was made available to us. No explanation has been given as to why the stables were built to residential standards. So forget the documentation, we have a building that's built to residential standards. The issue is just one of many on this site. Another application is pending, I wrote in here, but in fact it's happened now. It happened last week at Plans East, when once again councillors were given misleading information by officers. Probity in the planning system is absolutely critical for its function. Without probity, councillors, your system of planning falls down. You should never have probity questions.
Can you
okay,
come
yeah.
to the conclusion of your question, please,
Yep.
Mr. Hadfield?
Okay. And the question is, should not the council properly investigate the issue, whatever the cost? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Phillip, you're going to take this microphone.
Thank you. At the request of the Chief Executive, the Chief Internal Auditor, independent of the Council, and the Council's Corporate Fraud Manager examined 17 allegations from Mr Padfield, suggesting potential fraud and collusion regarding the Tilegate development. The investigation involved interviews with the relevant officers, a review of planning files, as well as the documentation available to the public on the Council's website. The Chief Internal Auditor, on the 19th of April, gave a detailed reply back to Mr Padfield to each of the 17 allegations and concluded in her letter, our investigation has not found any evidence of fraud by Council officers. The information supplied by the applicant has been appropriately scrutinised by officers, and there is no evidence of favouritism, and several officers involved in the process and to sign off approval granted at the appropriate levels. Unless you're able to provide new or fresh evidence of fraud, she deemed the investigation closed. Then on the 20th of April 22, Mr Padfield formally replied to the Chief Internal Auditor's letter with further concerns regarding the residential stables conversion, with the nub of Mr Padfield's email being the Council's denial of the existence of an application. As with the original investigation, relevant officers were interviewed with a review of planning files as well as the documentation available to the public on the Council's website. The Chief Internal Auditor concluded, the missing application was thoroughly investigated by officers at the time, and I am content with their conclusions. Without a proper digital forensic investigation, which would be costly at the Council, the documents you submitted as evidence of its existence cannot be verified. Both this allegation and the previous one is about officers colluding. As with my original investigation, this investigation has found that proper processes have been followed with adequate oversight by senior officers. There is no evidence of collusion between officers or with the applicant. The Internal Auditor goes on that regarding why no explanation has been given as to why the stables are built to residential standards, the Internal Auditor is unable to comment on that. That is down simply to professional judgment, and she's unqualified to do so. Instead, she assured the Council followed the correct processes and there was adequate evidence to collaborate this. Added to that, there is no planning permission for residential use of the stables. Members, I will mention a little bit later the financial situation the Council is in. At this time, it's not sensible to be spending that extra money on doing other worthless investigation.
Thank you very much. Mr Padfield, you do have the opportunity to ask a supplementary question, but without bringing in any new material. So if you wish to do that.
Chairman, all I'd like to say to councillors that we have 17,000 square metres, or 17,000 square...
It's an opportunity for a question,
yes,
not a statement.
It is related to that. It is because on every occasion, every square inch of this development has been given permission under delegated powers. None of it has come to councillors. At the last Plans East, officers deliberately, once again, prevented...
I'm sorry, Mr Padfield, but do you have a question to put to
Yes.
Councillor Phillip?
The question to councillors is that why are you not policing more diligently the delegated powers given to officers?
Thank you. Councillor Phillip, would you wish to respond to that question? Microphone.
Mr Padfield should be aware that we do scrutinise very carefully the delegated decisions that are made by officers. We have been through the Constitution Committee on many occasions looking at which decisions are delegated. As Mr Padfield well knows, to say that all the decisions are under-delegated, that's not true. We know over the last couple of years we've seen at least 2 occasions where Talgate has come in front of members on Plans East. We do scrutinise, we do only have delegated authority to officers under particular cases, and where those aren't met, then those come to Planning Committee. It is always possible for a member of a Planning Committee who has an application within their ward that they want to be scrutinised by members for them to call it in. It is equally possible for parish councils to indicate on planning grounds why they want an application to come to committee, as long as they're willing to come and speak to it. Members, we've looked into this in great detail. There is no evidence for what Mr Padfield is saying, and I'm quite confident that on this occasion we have followed our processes correctly.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr Padfield. If we can now move on. I'm conscious that Councillor Heap has got his virtual hand up. I can't see any reason at this stage that you have an opportunity to speak, Councillor Heap. I'm assuming this is a mistake. So we move on to item 8, questions by members under notice. I don't believe we have any.
No, Chairman.
Thank you. Item 9 is reports from the leader and members of cabinet on pages 21 to 58. I know that the leader is going to give us a verbal report, so if I can go first to Councillor Whitbread.
Thank you, Chairman. A very short report this evening. But first of all, can I have my name associated with your comments earlier about how well our staff did as part of Operation London Bridge. Pat, Tom, Rebecca, the whole team were first class and did an excellent, real good, excellent job for this council, and actually put us in good stead across the community in the way that everything was handled. So if I could just have my name associated with your words from earlier. Over the past month, obviously I've been having my regular meetings that I have with the Harlow Garden Town Board, separate to the general meetings where we discuss issues that are pertinent to Epping Forest, and making sure that we're understanding what's going on. We're also playing an active role in the devolution piece, following on from the government's white paper on levelling up. There is obviously a certain element there that we hope that we can get the best for the district from in the future. It's not devolution as in was originally anticipated with local government reform. This is very much around seeing how we can operate better as a West Essex Alliance. That members will remember that term from many years ago, but of course that work between ourselves, Uttlesford and Harlow along that corridor are going to become more and more important as time goes on, and obviously, especially bearing in mind that the government has now announced investment zones, and we're always interested in getting the best we can for the people of Epping Forest, whether that be in skills, employment and opportunity, because we want to see Epping Forest prosper and do well. And of course, most importantly, in order to do that as a council, we need to make sure that we remain in good financial conditions. I've been working very closely over recent weeks and months with Councillor Phillip to make sure that we have a balanced budget at the end of the year in the most productive way possible. So there's an awful lot going on out there, and of course I'm also minded of the progress this council is making, and you mentioned it earlier on. I know Councillor Holly Whitbread, if she was here this evening, would have mentioned it probably, and she probably still will. But of course the council house building programme, where we're seeing the delivery of quality council homes, and I can't help but think Councillor Spinks would be very proud, having served with him, to see the product that's been named after him in Waltham Abbey. And I know Councillor Murray is very keen to see something similar for Joan Davis in the future, another excellent councillor from the past who cared passionately about housing. And I couldn't help but draw comparisons, especially as we look back over the Queen's life and what we've gone through as a society over recent years, that how council houses have come on from one that I grew up in, which had lino on the floors and paraffin heaters rather than the flashiest, latest central heating in the property. But it was a good reminder of where we're going to as a district and our aspirations for the district, particularly as we start to develop the corporate plan, which will is our strategic document for the future, which came to Cabinet last night and is an important piece of work that we've been doing collaboratively across the council, and it's been to scrutiny everything else. And it's a really important document for us as a council because it's done at the backdrop of a really difficult time for everybody, the cost of living crisis that's affecting families across the district, and of course impacting on us as a council. We're all affected by inflation and the really tough times that we've got out there post-pandemic. So a quieter time for meetings at the moment because of all that's gone on, but actually a very productive time and a good time to reflect and move the council forward. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Any Cabinet members who wish to add to their written reports? Councillor Cade.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I wanted to update members on the local land charges position. Members will be aware that there's been quite a backlog over the last few months, with up to 10 weeks and more for land searches to be completed. This is a result of a government initiative to centralise the registry search function, or a large part of it, with an online database. But of course, from our part, that means uploading some 60,000 records to the central system, which all requires data cleansing, data formatting, and retries. And there's been a whole process of going backwards and forwards between government and ourselves until we got it right. I'm pleased to say that the government have now accepted the data that we've updated as of just 2 weeks ago, and we're now busy working on the backlog, and the backlog is now down to just under 7 weeks. So I'm confident that probably by the end of this month, turn of next, we should be back to normal 10-day turnaround times. So I'm pleased to report that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Phillip.
Thank you, Chairman. It's time to depress all the members. For those who weren't here at Cabinet last night, the financial situation looking forward into next year is really bad. Just to summarise it, we've got a projected expenditure of somewhere north of 19 million and a projected income of around 15 million. So we've got a gap of about 1.4 million between what we need and what we think we've got. The HRA is all right at the moment. In the future, perhaps about 11 years out, 10 years, 11 years out, we see it moving into a more challenging financial position, but we have time to work on that, and I know Councillor Holly Whitbread will be looking at the 30-year HRA plan to try and bring that into balance, but we have time for that. We have a real problem coming next year. I know I stood here in February at the budget and said this was the hardest budget we've had. This one is going to be harder, and probably next year's is going to be even harder than that. So we're looking at that gap of 4.1, 4.2 million. There's a lot of things we don't know yet, and we probably won't know for a while in terms of things like where inflation's going to go, what are the costs going to be for energy supplies, how much money are we going to get from government. So we're taking our best estimates at the moment. As I said last night, I fully expect those things to change between now and when we come back into Cabinet in December with an updated view of the budget. I expect it to change between then when we bring the budget finally to Cabinet in January and then to this chamber in February. It is going to keep changing. I wish I could be optimistic and say I hope it's going to change for the better in that time, but I think all we need to look is the past few months and look at what's happened where we are. It is not going to get easier. So we will have to come back. We will have to come back with some difficult decisions. It will be choices between things that we don't want to drop and things we can't drop. We will continue to protect our frontline services. We will make sure that we look after the most vulnerable in our society, but there will be costs and there will be things that we have to pass on. We haven't got a magic money tree. We can't magic up money to cover increased staff salaries, increased energy costs, etc. But rest assured, the Cabinet is working very hard with its lead officers, looking at every area of the Council, looking to see what we can do this year and what we can do in the coming years to actually make this better. So, members, this is a warning of what's coming down the line. There will be difficult decisions, but as I have over the last few years bringing forward the budget, we will do this in a collaborative way. I will come to scrutiny with the detailed proposals of where we're going. I just ask your patience at the moment. There is so much that's unknown. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much for that update. Councillor Holly Whitbread, do you wish to add something to your report?
Thank you, Chairman, and sorry for my physical absence this evening. Unfortunately, I had a positive COVID test. Not too much to add to my report, but I just wanted to emphasise what a good event it was to open Spinks House in Waltham Abbey with great attendance from yourself and also from Councillor Liz Webster. These two family homes in the heart of Waltham Abbey are a real testament to how successful our council house building programme has been, and actually the fact they were built in an energy efficient way, particularly mindful of the current energy crisis and trying to reduce costs of energy for our tenants. So that was something that was really positive to see. As Councillor Phillip touched upon in his report, the HRA account is also something that we're looking at in close detail in the coming weeks and months, particularly considering the challenges around inflation and how this might affect our future building programme. We set out a really comprehensive 30-year business plan which looks largely at regeneration and council house building, but this may have to be slightly modified just in relation to the cost of borrowing. But this council is certainly very much committed to continuing with our council house building and regeneration programme. Two things that are not mentioned in my report directly, but I have been involved in. There was an event held in collaboration with Voluntary Action Epping Forest, actually on the day the Queen died, in the District Council, which hosted Ukrainian refugees and their host families. And this was an opportunity to introduce these people to various relevant community partners from the NHS who were there giving COVID vaccines, also the local job centre and our housing teams, as well as community policing. And that was a really fantastic event, as well as being an information event. It was also a great opportunity for refugees and host families to socialise. So that was positive. Another thing that I did last month was I visited the Ninefields estate along with many community partners, including the Fire Brigade, the police, Citizens Advice and NHS partners, and got involved in a door knocking activity where we were seeking to find people who may have various different needs and require different support. And that was a really successful event with literally hundreds of doors knocked on and support and referrals given where necessary. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bedford.
Thank you, Chairman. As Councillor Phillips' job is to depress everybody, my job is to try and cheer you up. So I'd just like to say that following on from Inspector Jonathan Bohr, who's been working very closely with the council and officers who've been doing an extremely diligent job in making sure that they get the changes to the main modifications and further main modifications sorted out. I'll just bring some news to the Chamber that we're expecting to launch at the end of the month. There will hopefully be an update on the website by the end of it, and it is likely we will not commit to a precise date, but it will be close to the end of this month. It is critical that we are clear what this stage of consultation is about, which is, it is about the further changes, the further main modifications only, and it is not an opportunity to resubmit previous representations or make representations on main modifications that have not changed. Some points of note are that representations will be encouraged online as much as possible, although emails and hard copy submissions are possible. Email and phone contacts for planning policy will be provided for those with queries and updated guidance made available. All materials will be available online and supported by hard copies at the Civic and at libraries. Members will be updated via the member briefing notification that will go out externally to consultee on the database and via council press and social media promotions. We are ensuring officer awareness across the council via the staff newsletter with direct liaison and across teams, etc. And I wanted to bring this important news to you as soon as I could, so there you go.
Thank you very much for that. No other updates to the report, so if we move on to questions by members without notice. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Chairman. As this is the first time I've spoken since your remarks, can I say Play in the Park is well worth a visit. I visited 2 of my schemes. The young families loved it, and the quality of the leadership of our staff and the commitment of our staff was fantastic, so it is well worth a visit. My question, Madam Chairman, is I think if Councillor Avery isn't here, I speak to the Leader of Council, and I want to combine 2 things. We all know that we've had experiences with the Refuge Service, and we all know that we're now going out to tender. Was at the Cabinet yesterday. So my question around that is, what lessons have the Council learned from the experience of the last, let's say, 6 months, and how are those lessons going to be reflected in the new tender? And if at the end of the time there's time for another question, I have got a second question, if I can.
Thank you. Councillor Whitbread.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Murray, for your question. I think it's helpful for an update on the current situation, and obviously there was the report to Cabinet last night. I arrived home from County Hall this evening to find my rubbish still sitting on my driveway, bottles uncollected, bags all across the cul-de-sac where I live, and I understand the frustration that residents are finding with the service that BIFA are currently affording to residents across Epping Forest in both urban and rural areas. It's very, very frustrating. We had a meeting with them a short time ago and asked for more live information to be supplied to us, and to my knowledge that's not happening still. The website is never properly up to date with information. I am as frustrated as every resident in Epping Forest with this problem. What have we learnt from it? Well, some of it is not BIFA's fault. Let's be quite frank about that. We're in a situation at the moment. A few months back now, or almost a year back now, we were applauding BIFA for keeping the operation running smoothly during the pandemic. What's happened in the days since we are seeing the stresses and strains on trying to retain a workforce, and that's the real bugbear of the issue. Is keeping the workforce, keeping people active within BIFA and to keep teams working on the road. I accept that is difficult, but of course our residents, because councils don't have money, we only have our residents' money. Residents are paying for a service and we demand that service is delivered. And we will make sure that we do as a council hold BIFA's feet to the fire in delivering that service, and that's what we continue to do. And can I applaud our officers as well at the same time? I have to say I think James and David Marsh and the team do a brilliant job in trying to monitor and chase and I shall be firing an email off this evening about my own rubbish, and doing their best to make sure that rubbish is collected. I was spoken to by a resident only the other evening as I came into the council offices, what's going on down in Lindsay Street this time. You know, so it's all over the district. It's not just one place or another. But most importantly, the lesson we learn from this is it's so important to have a good client side as well as, our council side as well as the provider. And our council side has been working hard. That's why we've had our own lorries sometimes going out to collect rubbish where it hasn't been done. So I hope that helps, Councillor Murray, but I sincerely understand the problems.
Thank you very much. Councillor Helen Kane.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I ask the Cabinet Member of Housing to tell us about the Council's record of council house delivery and regeneration in Waltham Abbey, please?
Thank you very much. Councillor Holly Whitbread.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you to Councillor Kane for that excellent question. Well, Waltham Abbey was the place where we actually started the council house building programme almost a decade ago. Actually, 10 properties are due to be delivered in Waltham Abbey this year. Talking first about the properties we delivered on Pick Hill, which is Spink's House, which I just referred to in my report, which are 2 brand new large family homes for local people. We've got another development of 8 affordable units, which I actually saw whilst out campaigning in Waltham Abbey the other day. But like the rest of our district, Waltham Abbey is a key place where we want to deliver new council homes. I did reflect upon some of the challenges with council house delivery, which we will be experiencing in the coming years, but we've always been committed as a council to continuing this programme, and the 30-year business plan sets out an ambitious target for delivery, and Waltham Abbey will be at the very heart of that delivery. I'd also just like to touch on the regeneration of Harvey Fields of £114,000 of development of regeneration works completed there just recently, which included tidying the bin areas, looking at the paving and the outdoor space. And regeneration really is kind of core to our bricks and mortar vision, which I talk about often in these meetings. But I'm delighted to see works completed very recently in Waltham Abbey.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Councillor Amos.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I would like to ask Councillor Holly Whitbread about the particular mention in her report of 91 homeless inquiries during the month of August. I wonder if for future reports, I'm not asking for it now, for future reports, if we could have a summary as to how all those homeless people were helped with their inquiries. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Holly Whitbread.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Amos. I think it's an important point to touch on, actually, particularly in light of the financial challenges that we're all facing at present. I think homelessness will become a more pressing issue. So just to be clear, to define the different types of homelessness, these people referred to in my report are homeless but not rough sleepers. So the usual process would be that they would be put into temporary accommodation while we try and find them more permanent accommodation. And within that accommodation, the council will be providing various support and advice. Obviously, we want to help people out of that situation, and our officers will be working really closely with those individuals to do that. One area where we've had great success in recent years actually is around homelessness prevention, and these numbers that we're seeing are an increase. We've done quite a lot of work around trying to prevent people being at the point where they have to declare themselves homeless, because obviously this then adds a pressure to the general fund and also to our temporary housing stock. But it's something we're very mindful of. We try and get people out of temporary accommodation as soon as possible. We also try and keep people within our temporary accommodation, which we own as a council. So Norway House and Hemnall House is where we do try and house people, but at the moment we do have a number of people in B&B accommodation. But I am happy to provide a detailed summary of where those individuals are and the situations, obviously not talking about specific individuals, but a bit of a summary of such cases. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Chris Pond.
Thank you, Chairman. I think this is a question for Councillor Williamson, but if it's not, it does pick up a couple of points in his report. He'll no doubt tell me. Last autumn and, in fact, in the late winter, a large number of trees were planted further to a grant on Jessel Green and Rochford Green in Loughton. Now, I know that there is a considerable amount of attrition generally from trees, but because these trees were planted quite late, very, very many of them have failed. Perhaps Councillor Williamson can tell us what the plans and what the financial situation is as to how these might be replaced, because of course we are in the tree planting season now until about January, February, so remedial action needs to be taken soon. And the other point I just wanted to make, I was glad to see on page 51 of Councillor Williams' report that Mr Stubbs from Chelmsford is joining us as Heritage and Planning Enforcement Officer. He's very welcome, he's much needed, and we'd like to see what programme he has in his new field.
Thank you. Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Pond. I don't know the answer regarding the trees, but I will obviously look into it and get back to you. Regarding Mr Stubbs, I have had a Teams meeting with him, and I join you in looking forward to working with him in the future. Thank you for your questions.
Okay, so you will get a later response. Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, Chairman. My question is also for the portfolio holder for housing, and I would like to ask for an update on the Safer Streets scheme on Ninefields at Waltham Abbey, and if she could also elaborate on the work around the door knocking activity with the community partners, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Holly Whitbread.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Matthews. It's great that we can attend these meetings virtually when we do have COVID, because it's good to be able to have the opportunity to answer all these questions this evening. In relation to the Safer Street scheme on Ninefields, members will be aware from the last full council that over £300,000 worth of investment is going into the Ninefields estate. This is a grant that we received from the Home Office, working in partnership with the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner, and also match funding from the District Council as well. This grant will be used to improve spaces, so increase lighting, increase CCTV, also work to tackle litter and fly tipping on the estate, and generally trying to make it a more pleasant environment for people to live where they feel more comfortable. In terms of engagement, we have begun engagement with residents on the estate, working with the Ninefields Residents Association, but also having meetings with key community partners to decide exactly how this money is allocated, and also make sure there's no duplication. Just kind of elaborating on the door knocking, which I referred to in my report. This scheme was actually led by the Fire and Rescue Service. Predominantly, the first question asked was, do you have a fire alarm and is it working? And if it wasn't working, the fire service would go in there and replace those fire alarms. But linked with that were a number of other questions about people's personal circumstances. So, for example, there was NHS representatives, mental health representatives. So it was about finding out what the key issues were in the local community and trying to get people the support they required. Our community champions and our officer, actually, Wendy Cockbill, did a fantastic job of coordinating this effort, did a really good job in helping to collate the information and also signposting people to the support they needed. This was a kind of a trial scheme in Ninefields, which worked quite well as quite a condensed area for door door knocking. But I know it's something that we're quite keen to roll out elsewhere, particularly in some of our more deprived areas, so potentially also looking at the Shelley estate where we've done some work on our kind of super output areas. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've got Councillor Patel, Councillor Kesker, Councillor Heap and Councillor John Whitehouse. So if I can go to Councillor Patel.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm really aware that I think too many questions have gone to Councillor Whitbread, but just one more if I may. I had a question about the rising energy crisis for our residents and whether or not we were looking into warm rooms or those kind of schemes for going forward as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Whitbread.
Thank you, Chairman. I think this would probably be a double act with myself and the other Councillor Patel if he was here, but unfortunately he's not in attendance this evening. In relation to warm rooms, we have had numerous conversations with voluntary partners around this, conscious about the ever increasing energy bills, which thankfully there's been an energy price guarantee which should help to ease some of the issues around this, but obviously people very much still struggling with energy costs. So we have had conversations with Voluntary Action Epping Forest, who are looking at initiatives around various community hubs for delivering this. Actually at County Council for Council today, there was an announcement of a winter warm grant, which will be available to parish councils and community groups to set up kind of appropriate warm spaces. I know that Northwold, actually, I've had a specific conversation with about potentially opening either the library or one of the community halls and providing kind of a hot drink and also a social space for people to meet. So it is something that we're in conversations with and looking at to deliver in partnership with community partners. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Councillor Kesker.
Thank you, Chairman. In fact, I was going to comment on item 12 on the agenda. Am I a bit premature?
Sorry. In that case, I will go to Councillor Heap.
Thank you, Chairman. If Mr Padfield's still there, I have been asking for exactly this kind of thing at various committees. But my question today is for the planning officer, the planning portfolio holder, which is, given that with the state of the plan being very, very behind, but maybe coming to fruition right now, we have to build 2.6 dwellings every day, including Christmas. Does he think the plan can be achieved?
Thank you. Councillor Bedford? Or Councillor Williamson, sorry.
Madam Chairman, it's a bit of a crossover of responsibilities there. Obviously, we're bringing forward the local plan. We're doing the best we can. And yes, Councillor Heap, we will have to try and meet that target if that's the figure you're telling us is correct. All we can do, I suppose you haven't considered the fact that quite a few houses have already been built. And those ones that have been built are the ones that are the windfall ones that have come through, plus the backlog that we've achieved in clearing the backlog from the SAC questions. So yes, well, I suppose we are getting back on track, but like everything else, we can only do what we can do. We can't go out there physically ourselves and start digging holes and putting houses up in the ground. It's just not going to happen. The best we can do is we've got targets to work towards, and we will monitor those targets, and if possible, we will go and try and see what we can do to improve those targets. We are noticing now some of the planning applications coming forward are going for increased numbers on sites. After all, when the local plan was first drafted, it was an indicative plan. Therefore, some of the sites that may have, just for example, asked for 50 houses on those sites, they've now been increased, and it could be 60 or 70 houses. I think we've only come across one so far that has actually been a reduction in number, and I think that's the one in Ongar, where they've gone from about 114, 115 down to about 97. So yes, we are doing our best. No guarantees, as life changes every day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Williamson, did you have anything to add, or has it been covered?
No, I concur with everything Councillor Bedford said. I think with all of these targets, there is a lag between making these numbers, getting the permissions and actually building out. And I think many of our schemes were coming to fruition and may well now be in trouble commercially. So it is difficult times for all of us. So I think we just have to, as Councillor Bedford said, do the best we can and monitor what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor John Whitehouse.
Thanks, Chairman. This is a question for Councillor Bedford as well. I'm grateful for his update earlier. It's now getting on for 2 years since the interim air pollution mitigation strategy was adopted. And I just wondered if we could have an update on the results of the monitoring that's been carried out and any changes in air pollution since it was adopted, and the allocation of the funds generated by the Section 106 agreements. And in particular, the last meeting of the Portfolio Advisory Group, or the working group, was cancelled. I wonder when the date of the next meeting would be.
Thank you. Councillor Bedford.
Thank you. Thank you for those questions, Councillor Whitehouse. Yeah, the air mitigation strategy was agreed 2 years ago, the interim air mitigation strategy. And I think, if I remember correctly, I think the air quality monitoring was due to take place in 24. We may actually be bringing that forward to 23. All signs are at the moment that the actual air quality, because of the COVID, obviously has dropped off. But added to that, there's been a massive increase in the number of electric vehicles and changing habits of drivers going through EFDC land. The other thing that's going to contribute as well is that we believe the Mayor will be bringing forward his plans, which all residents are made aware of, in probably October and sometime next year, close to that date, where he will be imposing the new ULEZ right up to the boundary with Epping Forest. That is going to impact some of our residents, and we don't want to have to go down that route, so we're doing everything we can to be in discussions with them to see what we can bring forward. But unfortunately, we are only a small cog in the Mayor's wheel, as he's completely all the way around London. All the other boroughs will want to bring forward similar schemes. So at the end of the day, I suppose we have to say that the Section 106 monies that we've been collecting in have been slowly accruing, and it is those monies that have been set aside specifically for the air quality monitoring within the 106 budgets. I couldn't tell you how much is in there, but if you needed to know, I could get Mr Richardson to produce you some information around the amount of money that's held on funds to pay for those checks. And the Portfolio Advisory Group, I raised it the other day, and it is about time that we have another one. I think it's been put off in the past. We didn't have anything to contribute, but if members have any new ideas, please bring them forward to the group. And I look forward to the next Portfolio Advisory Group meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wixley.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I've got a question. I'm not sure which portfolio holder is responsible for it. I think it might be Councillor Avey, but of course he isn't here tonight. But my question is another tree question, actually, regarding street trees. And I understand that we plant those on behalf of the Essex County Council, and they provide funding for that. But my information is that funding is substantially reduced last year. And I'm just wondering what the current situation is and how many trees we can plant this year, street trees that is, because I think at one time we could plant around about 160, but I think last year it was down to about 80. So I don't know if anybody can answer that, or perhaps I can get an answer in due course.
Thank you. Bit of discussion going on. Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Wixley, for your question. Yeah, I believe trees are now under my portfolio. Again, I will find an answer for you and get back to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm looking around, and if no one else, if no one else has any other questions, I will go back to Councillor Murray for his second question.
Thank you, Chairman. It's not being greedy. It is a relevant question based on an oral report we had. Councillor Kane mentioned the land search, and he gave it to us in a very factual way. But I've got a two-part question based on that. Does he realise that the delay in land searches can have a very, very real effect, particularly on first-time buyers who are negotiating mortgage deals, which are short-term limited? And does he have any idea how many young couples have lost mortgage deals because they've been waiting for land searches? And of course, we all know new mortgage deals are much more expensive. So does he understand the impact? Does he have any evidence, please, of how many people have lost mortgage deals because of the delay?
Thank you. Councillor Kane?
Well, thank you for that. And yes, I certainly understand the impact. No question of that at all. I unfortunately have no way of knowing how many couples were affected. That information would never get back to me. I would like to take the opportunity to say this was in no way avoidable. It was a government edict. We had to do this by their milestones, their dates, and the scale of the work was not known beforehand. So we submit our data, and then an unknown number would then come back for corrections with a finite date for delivery of those corrections. So I'd like to take the opportunity to thank the team for doing what they did. I know the impact on people was this 10-week and more waiting time, but I'm really pleased to say we're over that hurdle now, and we can focus on reducing that backlog, and we should be back to normal within the month.
Thank you very much. And no other questions. I'll move on to item 12 on the agenda, which is the Ongar Neighbourhood Plan, which you will find starting on page 59. And Councillor Bedford, you're going to present this?
Thank you, Chairman. Obviously, this is the Ongar Neighbourhood Plan. It's been some time in the process. All the details are contained within the report. There are a few things that I'd just like to bring to members' attention. So there's a few questions that I asked officers to prepare that could have come forward from the floor or might assist in understanding the plan and what implications it might have going forward. So a question, what weight will the policies in the Ongar Neighbourhood Plan have once it is made or adopted by the council? And the answer there is, once the Ongar Neighbourhood Plan is made by the council, it forms part of a statutory development plan. Consequently, its policies will carry full weight in assuming planning applications where the Ongar Neighbourhood Plan is considered to be material consideration. This is stated in paragraphs 1.2 of the Ongar Neighbourhood Plan. Question 2. What happens if the policy or the policies contained with the Ongar Neighbourhood Plan conflict with the policies in the adopted local plan, which was adopted in 1998, which had some alterations in 2006? The Ongar Neighbourhood Plan has been developed with full regard to the policies contained in the adopted local plan. However, should a policy conflict arise between the two plans, Section 38(5) of the Planning and Compulsory Purchases Act 2004 requires that the conflict must be resolved in favour of the policy which is contained in the last document to become part of the development plan. This would therefore be the policy or policies in the Ongar Neighbourhood Plan. Question 3. What is the relationship between the policies in the Ongar Neighbourhood Plan and the policies in the emerging local plan? There was no legal requirement to examine the Ongar Neighbourhood Plan policies against policies in the emerging plan. However, as the Ongar Neighbourhood Plan states at section 5.4, local strategic policies, it is advisable to take account of the emerging local Epping Forest Local Plan 2011 to 2033. The evidence behind the emerging local plan is part of the evidence base for the neighbourhood plan, where relevant. It goes on to state that in the same section that the Ongar Neighbourhood Plan Steering Group, the Ongar Neighbourhood Plan Community Group, ONPCG, has worked in liaison with Epping Forest District Council throughout the preparation of the plan to reduce the risk of disparities between the emerging local plan and the neighbourhood plan. Planning policy briefing for me. Right. The next question, what weight will the policies in the Ongar Neighbourhood Plan, ONP, have if the emerging local plan is adopted by the council in the future? The Ongar Neighbourhood Plan will sit alongside a newly adopted local plan as part of the development plan, and as such its policies will continue to attract full weight in relation to planning applications where the Ongar Neighbourhood Plan is considered to be a material consideration. What happens if a policy or policies contained in the Ongar Neighbourhood Plan conflict with a newly adopted local plan or policies? Section 5.4 Local Strategic Policies of the Ongar Neighbourhood Plan states that the Ongar Neighbourhood Plan Steering Group, the ONPCG, has worked in liaison with Epping Forest District Council throughout the preparation of the plan to reduce the risk of disparities between the emerging local plan and the neighbourhood plan. However, should a policy conflict arise between the two plans, Section 38(5) of the Planning and Compulsory Purchases Act 2004 requires that the conflict must be resolved in favour of the policy which is contained in the last document to become part of the development plan. This would therefore be the policy or policies contained in any newly adopted local plan. Will the Ongerhood Neighbourhood Plan need to change as the emerging local plan progresses towards potential adoption if a local plan is adopted? The examining inspector for the Ongerhood Neighbourhood Plan stated on page 11 of her examination report in relation to the emerging local plan that there are a number of references throughout the plan to the emerging local plan. These references will need to be carefully reviewed to ensure that they are up to date and clearly indicate the emerging status of the local plan, and may well have to be changed as the plan progresses to its next stages. Madam Chairman, I think everyone's had plenty of time now to read the document. Unless there's any specific questions on the neighbourhood plan, I think the recommendation is that it is adopted. The briefing is at the front. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Keskrag, do you wish to ask a question or a comment? Councillor Bedford, your microphone.
Thank you, Chairman. I couldn't possibly follow Councillor Bedford's comments. They're very erudite and all-encompassing as well. I will simply say that I pay tribute to the Ongar Neighbourhood Planning Community Group, and that's a mouthful, but nevertheless they've worked extremely hard on this, and they've worked closely with EFDC officers and councillors. And I would pay tribute to the work they've done to create this document, and I would ask councillors to adopt this plan tonight.
Thank you very much. Unless there are any other... Oh, sorry, Councillor Phillip and then Councillor Wixley.
Chairman, just a quick one. Can I ask my colleague to make sure that the Planning Department has claimed all valid monies from the government for getting through this stage of the referendum of the neighbourhood plan? It would be a pity to have done all this good work and not get the money that were due for it.
Thank you. Councillor Bedford.
We'll certainly try. I'll get back to you.
Thank you. Councillor Wixley.
Yeah, well, I think Councillor Bedford's work on this neighbourhood plan, I'd very much like to see his report in writing. I don't know if it can be recorded in the minutes or if it can be put on in the bulletin, but I think it's quite interesting what he had to say, and I'd like to study it at greater length.
Thank you. So, Councillor Bedford, are you happy that it...
Yeah, most certainly. I'll pass the copy over. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I think Councillor Stalker.
Thank you, Chairman. Far be it from me to prick Councillor Beaufort's bubble, but on page 59, the second section, background to the Ongar Neighbourhood Plan, the last line of that first paragraph should clearly not be November to December 2022. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Bedford.
Duly noted. We're trying to work backwards, obviously.
Thank you. Obviously a very comprehensive piece of work that has gone on producing this neighbourhood plan. Are members happy to that the Ongar neighbourhood plan be made, i.e. adopted as part of the Epping Forest Statutory Development Plan? Are members agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. And then moving on to item 13 on page 61, the annual report of the Audit and Governance Committee for 2021-22. And if I can go to Councillor Bolton to present this report.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I present this report to you for acceptance. I joined the Audit and Governance Committee following my re-election in May, so I've only been on the committee since after this report, but I can see no major problems. I have attended 2 meetings since being elected chairman. I would like to just, with your permission, just draw your attention to a few things that are in this report, but we have discussed since, which are relevant. There have been no reports to this committee during that year of fraud that is relevant, and that has been looked into. We had a presentation from a representative from Deloitte, and this is mentioned. They have not yet accepted the accounts, but hope to do so on your behalf as councillors. I stressed to Deloitte that although this is happening throughout the country, we have a legal responsibility to accept a budget, and therefore we need them to get a move on with those accounts, because we can't move on to the next year unless this has been done. The other thing is about the co-opted post. We are going out to interview and intend to interview on the 3rd of November for a second co-opted member. We have one at the moment who is our Vice Chairman, Tony Jarvis, and we're interviewing for a second. I know.
Okay.
Welcome any comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Phillip.
Thank you, Chairman. It falls on me to be able to thank the Audit and Governance Committee both last year and this year for the sterling work that they do examining the various parts of the business that we look at. I have to say it's never an easy ride when we come to the Audit and Governance Committee. They're always making sure that we actually step up the mark and give them good reasons for what it is we're doing. A couple of things I'd just like to add to what Councillor Bolton said. Firstly, to thank Councillor Hadley for his year of chairing it last year. He did a great job there, and I'm very grateful for that. It's good to have Councillor Bolton in there now. It doesn't make it any easier a job standing up to that. I would echo Councillor Bolton's comments around the timing of the audit. I would like to make it very clear this is down to the auditors, not to our finance department, who are doing a lot of work giving the auditors what they want when they want it, and it's not fair for them to complain about delays if they haven't already asked for it, which has happened once or twice. And just the one piece of good news I'd just add on to the end of it, the procurement for audit services has just come through, and it's worth noting that going forward, Deloitte is not on the list.
Thank you for that. Any other questions or comments around this report? In that case, this report, the recommendation is that it should be the annual report to the Audit and Governance Committee for 21-22 be noted. Noted. Thank you very much. And then moving on to item 14 on the agenda, the progress report from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee for July to September. Councillor Helen Kane.
Thank you, Chairman. We have my report. It is from the 26th of July, but I would like to stay a little bit longer on the 27th of September, just 10 days ago, also where we pre-scrutinised the Council's corporate plan and, of course, the 1 year Qualis business plan. Usually, it should be a 4-year business plan, but because of the uncertainty, we thought it would be too challenging and out of date. So we scrutinised the 1 year. I would like to add, though, that I agreed to an extra Overview and Scrutiny Committee meeting to be held on Thursday, the 3rd of November, to pre-scrutinise the business case for the transfer of grounds maintenance to Qualis. And something very important to all members, if I may, Chairman, there is a training session this Thursday. Although it is to all councillors, I urge the members of the Overview and Scrutiny and Select Committees to attend in the conference suite at 7 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just on that last matter, I think officers would like names of anybody sent through to them if you are intending to attend. Would that, Mr. Whittle, go to yourself or? Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Councillor Murray, you?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I want to make some comments about the ONS report and the Chairman's oral comments. In the format of the agenda, I have to ask would the chairman of ONS agree with the following comments? Can I first of all thank her for the way that she's dealt with ONS this year? There's a renewed focus, in fact a sole focus on the council. And if we feel that we need to scrutinise something else, a larger outside body or another issue away from the council, that will be done through a separate meeting. So I think the laser focus on the council is to be welcomed. I mean, presumably she's going to welcome that because she's led it, but that would be, you know, whether she welcomes that. Secondly, we started the meeting about the budget, and would she agree with me that we need real scrutiny of what is a difficult budget, and that all councillors need to have some, maybe not ownership of it, but some involvement of the budget so that we can get the best possible outcome in difficult circumstances, and that as part of that scrutiny we should be looking at the needs of protecting core services and the most vulnerable in our society. Would she agree with me that the detailed consideration we gave of the Qualis one-year business plan was very thorough at our last meeting, and if members aren't on top of the Qualis one-year business plan, I think probably the ONS meeting is the best webcast to look at, because we gave it a right going over in a very positive way. And then she's referenced something very dear to my heart, and I'm really pleased that we're having the special meeting to consider the case for transferring grounds maintenance to Qualis. And would she agree with me that a really important part of our consideration must be the merit of the case, and that's in terms of service delivery and costs and cost savings? Would she further agree with me that as part of that scrutiny we do need to be reassured of the TUPE arrangement if there was to be a transfer? And would she finally agree with me that it's really important as part of that scrutiny that we get the results of due consultation with staff and their trade unions? Because I certainly won't be voting for any transfer, or supporting, because it'll be a cabinet decision. I certainly wouldn't be able to endorse any transfer if I hadn't seen the results of a proper consultation with staff and proper consultation with relevant trade unions.
Thank you very much. Councillor Helen Kane.
Well, first of all, I need to thank Councillor Murray because, you know, of his kind words. And of course, I agree, this is the way we're going forward with the overview scrutiny this year. And of course, I agree with everything he said. After all, he is one of my members. So it is very good to have good relationship with my members, I think.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments to this report? Councillor Phillip.
If I could just come back to what Councillor Murray was saying, I'm hoping for more than just scrutiny of the budget. If members have suggestions about what we can look at to economise, make savings, do come and speak to me. I'm really quite approachable. I don't bite too often, although Councillor Murray may sometimes doubt that. But I am quite nice sometimes. But as I said earlier, we really have a problem. I do want to hear what people have got. If they've got good ideas, let me know. So it's more than just scrutiny. Let's work together to make sure we've got the best budget we possibly can.
Thank you very much for that. And obviously, as this report is presented, it is for noting. Members happy to note it? Noted. Thank you very much. Item 15 is joint arrangements and external organisations. Does anybody have any? Councillor Helen Kane.
I'm ever so sorry that I didn't put a report. It is really very little to report. I saw what the trustees this morning, and it's very pleased to say that the Royal Gunpowder Mill's opening every weekend. And the very strange thing they all said, so we must make that a little bit take that as a consideration, really, is that there are a lot of tourists and a lot of visitors from all over the country, but very few from this district. So we have to change that. We can't have that. They put in place, you know, so they monitor who it is. And that's the only thing that they said today. But that is all.
Thank you very much. Any other members wishing to put anything forward? In that case, unusually, we don't have any other business on this agenda, but I understand that Councillor Kane has photographs which I will allow her to explain, but to be presented to the council.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. Apparently, where I work, in Warley's Park House, we found some old pictures, and we thought, you know, what they are. And apparently, they're not pictures. They are the original invitations. One is the visit of Her Majesty Queen Victoria, and that is in May 1882, when she actually came to the forest to give the forest to the people. So this is numbered, and it is the original invitation. And the other one is the laying the memorial stone of the Tower Bridge. The owner, which is the Prince of Wales. So these are the original invitations, and the owner, Chris Ralph, asked me to present them to you and to have them as, instead of going to the museum, as they are Epping Forest District Council, to be there in the chairman's office.
Thank you very much, and much appreciated, because since the refurbishment of the council offices, there's been a lack of pictures and other artefacts within the chairman's office, so that will be gratefully received. Do you want to hand them over to me officially? No, I'll come down into the well, or I'll come to you.
No, that's fine. Could I ask my husband and the leader if that's all right? Thank you.
I say, having handed over to myself, they will go into the chairman's office. But as members of the council, please do feel free to go and have a good look at them, because they have got a lot of detail in them, and very good to have something with such a history to it. So thank you very much. I think that concludes the business of the meeting. We've got no reason to exclude public and press, so I close the meeting at nearly 25 minutes to 9. I'm looking at a clock which is slightly askew, but 25 minutes to 9, but thank you very much for your attendance.